I really wish I knew how to talk to women. You and me both, Guybrush. You and me both. Originally released in 1990 for DOS EGA machines, October of 1990. December showed a DOS VGA version, and then 1991 it came onto the beautiful Amiga, as well as many other systems at the time, at least for computers. I want to say the Sega CD version was the only console release. Not quite sure about that one. LucasArts definitely made sure this one got out there on the computers, however. Remade so many times. I guess in 1993, I believe, saw a DOS CD-ROM release. There have been plenty of remakes over the years for this original Monkey Island, and as well as there should be, because it's an iconic title in the adventure game genre. Today we're showing off the Amiga version with its wonderful music. It's slightly different from the DOS original, by the way. They slightly altered some of the intro before they went into the main theme of it. Just this little tiny change to the theme, and it really makes it build up more suspense before it goes into the theme that we all know, which is about to be heard in a second here. Put them on both at the same time, and you'll see what I'm getting at there. But great music definitely overpowers the DOS FM version, although the Roland MT32, which it was originally designed on, is also very, very good, although the Amiga version has its own sampled instruments and stuff, so what you get is something that, depending on the person listening, definitely, you could like the MT32 version more, you might like this Amiga version more. It all depends on your personal taste. Both are good, and both definitely kick the butt out of the FM. Now, like the music, the Amiga version also has its own unique graphics to a degree. It's a weird combination. No other port has this combination. It's the character sprites themselves are based off of the DOS original EGA 16 color palette, but except for like the faces and stuff like LucasArts, they were always good with the Amiga, and they understood that, well, the Amiga had 4,096 colors, and even if it was based off an EGA original, well, they were smart enough to take the red skin of the DOS originals and put a peach color skin if the character was white, like Guybrush is. So, that was the only change from the 16 colors, is they made their faces better for the most part. Besides these guys, I guess, in the bar here, their skin's still pretty red. Now, like I said, the original DOS EGA version was released in October of 1990. A couple months later, they released the VGA version, and with it, they changed quite a bit, like this here. What you see here is a humanoid face. They decided with the VGA version to go with a humanoid face, and with the Amiga version as well. They went with that VGA humanoid faces, whereas the original EGA version, as well as like the Atari ST, there's a few other versions that did that one as well. They had a more cartoony look, and I believe Ron Gilbert is very much a fan of the original cartoony look. Well, the Amiga version takes from both the original EGA version in terms of the character sprites, as well as the VGA version in terms of the character portraits, as well as the overall backgrounds of the scenes. They are all based on the DOS VGA 256 color version, and it all looks good, and they were all, the colors are selected good rather than, just a straight, telling the Amiga to do its best with the 256 colors like, Sierra would do and stuff. They picked the colors nicely. So, again, like the music, it really depends on your overall taste. You might think this is the overall better-looking version. I personally do kind of like the Amiga graphics a little better. And here they are presented, probably for the first time online on the internet, in its original intended 4:3 NTSC aspect ratio, as it was designed in America by LucasArts. LucasArts is an American company. This is an American NTSC game, so as always, please keep that in mind and try to play them right when you play them yourself. Now, as you can see, the game itself in NTSC in America was designed to have a bit of a, widescreen movie-like feel when you're looking at the actual, game screen itself, and it's only when you are actually in the midst of the gameplay and you have your menu systems visible. That is when the bottom portion of the screen that shows, then it's in 4:3, and there are some, like the map screens too, are also in 4:3. When you play this in PAL mode, which normally on a game that is supposed to be completely in 4:3, as you see the menu screen there, the menu screen completely fills the entire 4:3 screen. Now, when you play it in PAL mode, like it does with all the other games, it will stretch them into nearly a 16:9 aspect ratio, modern widescreen aspect ratio. When you take a game that's already designed, supposed to be looking like it's widescreen, and then you stretch it even more, I mean, it really makes it look bad. And this is, according to LemonAmiga, the greatest Amiga game of all time. Sometimes it goes between the first and the second one. I believe right now the first one is the greatest Amiga game of all time, according to LemonAmiga, which is a European-leaning site. I've always found that to be a strange choice in terms of the European perspective. It surprises me in a good way, because you don't normally think. You think with the Europeans and how young they were at the time the Amiga was out, and how budget-minded they were in terms of the games that they bought. I always figured like a game, like a platformer like Azul would be up there, or some kind of a shoot-'em-up, etc. Some of the greatest American Amiga games of all time don't even make their list, and I believe they definitely deserve to be on that list, especially with some of the games they put on there. Nevertheless, Monkey Island 1 and 2 rank up there at the top, the very top of the greatest Amiga games. And originally this isn't even an Amiga game, it's a DOS game originally, so that's another curious thing. You think maybe they would want to put an Amiga original there, but a good game is a good game, and I also respect that choice to be okay with the fact that it's not necessarily an Amiga original, but they did do good with the Amiga, and as long as the game is good, then it deserves to be on lists like that. Absolutely, I agree 100% there. But this game, as well as the second game, were done in-house in America by LucasArts themselves. LucasArts, who did the original DOS version, also did the Amiga version in-house in America. So this is an American all the way Amiga game, and it is number 1 and 2, respectively. The Monkey Island 2 games there are the best Amiga games of all time, according to LemonAmiga. And how many of you Europeans understand that this is an American Amiga game? I don't know, because all of you say that the Amiga was nothing in America. It's nothing. We didn't care at all about it. And all the best games came out in Europe. Get a PAL machine, because all the best games came out in Europe. No. You take a good hard look at that LemonAmiga list there, which is voted by its users. So it's a consensus among the mostly European users there that 2 American games are the best Amiga games of all time. And you look at that list, and conservatively speaking, I think a good over 30 of those games are American in actual origin. And it's one thing when an American says, "Oh, you guys, you just don't care about great games like Railroad Tycoon or something." Maybe your interests just don't include, a Sid Meier's Railroad Tycoon or something. That's one thing, and that's fine. But it is another thing when so many of those games voted by its users. So many of those games are American, and I think predominantly most of them don't even realize this, and yet they still persist on with the narrative, the false narrative that is just get a PAL machine, because everything was designed in Europe. If American NTSC games would not play on PAL machines, which they do, overwhelmingly an NTSC American game, they will play on PAL machines. Yes, they'll have the graphics stretched into widescreen. Generally speaking, the gameplay itself will slow down quite a bit, and sometimes the music will as well. But generally speaking, they will just play not right. If those games would not play, it would be the end of this narrative that the Amiga was nothing in America. And I dare say you would have plenty of people say, well, maybe you should get an NTSC machine, actually. Because if it was the NTSC games, they wouldn't play on the PAL machines. I'm telling you, that story would change. So this, along with its sequel, are voted on as the number 1 and 2 Amiga games of all time. I think people should respect, what they voted for and take the effort. Put in some effort to understand the origins of the game, look into the game, research the games, figure out where this stuff came from, and then display them right. Play them at the proper speed and the proper aspect ratios. Because this is art, and you don't want to stretch artwork because it looks bad. Let's get into some goodies here. Let's show off a little bit of the manual, which the front cover of the manual features, the front cover of the box art. One of the best games in terms of its box art. Very awesome graphics style for the box. Now, the manual itself is pretty awful, I have to say. It's like 8 pages of, mostly interface talk. Does not heed the opportunity to dive you into, the backstory at all. Very unfortunate missed opportunity there, but I don't know. Maybe that's why the Europeans like this one so much, because those top 100 lists don't often include the games with the enormous manuals, the in-depth games with the enormous manuals. My top 100 lists would include those, really, but, this game here, I don't know why, because I really feel like the adventure genre, it is a genre, it's a deep genre. It's among, the deepest of the computer games, of your CRPGs, your simulations. I believe adventure games are right up there in terms of the puzzles and the intellect required to get through these games. I believe they should be in the in-depth category, and yet the manuals, they don't feel such, but I don't know. This game you can certainly just, pick up and play. Maybe that is the appeal of it. Nevertheless, let's look at the one single page that is of any interest to us for the most part. About the Secret of Monkey Island. In the Secret of Monkey Island, you play the role of Guybrush Threepwood, a young man who has just hit the shores of Malay Island somewhere in the Caribbean. Our naive hero's travels have led him to Malay Island in a quest to fulfill his life's ambition to become a fierce, swashbuckling, bloodthirsty pirate. Unbeknown to Guybrush, however, there have been some strange happenings in the area surrounding Malay Island and the more mysterious Monkey Island. As he walks into this maelstrom of mystery, Guybrush will soon be very aware that things are not what they appear to be. That even bloodthirsty pirates can be scared, and that there's more to being a pirate than swinging a sword and drinking grog. Here's where you come in. You direct the actions of Guybrush as he first explores Malay Island and then ventures on to Monkey Island. On Malay Island, Guybrush will have to prove himself worthy of becoming a pirate by completing the 3 trials. Through the course of completing these trials, you and Guybrush will learn much about pirate life and local folklore. But don't be surprised if you find that some of the people you meet seem rather anachronistic. And yes, that would actually probably be my greatest complaint about the first 2 games in particular there with Ron Gilbert at the helm, is that you never do feel like you are actually in the world with which this thing is supposedly creating for you. I don't particularly care for that, actually. Now, if you're watching my videos on 30-year-old games, I don't think I need any kind of a warning, in terms of spoiler alert or whatever. I think that, God, I don't understand people that refuse to show off spoilers for these old... showing more of the game at this point in your life, it's been 30 years, people. If showing you more could only help you. You want to play it yourself. Anyway, yeah, spoiler alert. Yes, these games, with Ron Gilbert at the helm, you will get the overall impression, especially when we come to the next one, that all of this is pretty much happening, on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. It's all the now. The now is it's in the early '90s. Okay, it's just this kid. His imagination is pretty much the impression you will get. Now, the third one, which is my favorite one, my favorite Monkey Island is the third one, which a lot of the diehards, don't like that one. Why don't they like that one? Well, it's because Ron Gilbert had nothing to do with it, and I like that, actually. I think his vision for this series, I don't particularly care for, because it is, just as you saw right there, the guy taking off his mask or whatever. It can be humor when you first see that. It's funny. It's humorous, but the more you like the game, the more you play it, the less satisfying it is to think that this is all we're just a little child on a ride. And I really like the way the third one just said, no. We're bringing you back to this world that we've created. This is escapism. This is a game. We're trying to take you back to this other reality. It's not supposed to be just like. I gotta tell you, the second game has one of the worst endings I've ever experienced in any video game. It's because of that enormous letdown. It's not clever. It's not clever to say all of this, it didn't even happen. It's not clever to say, oh, we were just dreaming the old time. Well, that is one of the most overused plot points in the history of drama. It's too lazy. I do my best to try and separate what is the probable reality in terms of the story from what is actually presented in game. I do my best with these games to not think too deep on them, because it just upsets me when I think deeply on the Monkey Island games. Thankfully, the third one, well, we'll get to that one another day. Also from the manual, this is curious, because this is actually not in the original American game manual. This is actually added to the European, the US Gold version. Now, US Gold, everybody, I don't know if you guys know this, but US Gold is not, it was not a company in America at all. It's called US Gold. It has nothing. The only thing it has to do with America is it was a publishing thing. It was a company in Europe, because I think the way it works is if you want to publish a game in a given country, you have to have a presence in that country, which is why some companies like Microprose would have an office both in America. They had one in Maryland, I believe, and they also had one somewhere in England. So Microprose could release a game like Pirates as Pirates from Microprose in either America or in Europe, because they had a presence in both locations, whereas a lot of companies would only have just based on their home location. So they would have to go through a different kind of a publisher in order to do that. England would do that too. Psygnosis had a presence in America. They had their own American location, so they could release Lemmings under the Psygnosis brand. Now, when the company did not have a location in Europe, but it was coming from America, like a LucasArts and like many other companies, what they would do is they would go to US Gold. And US Gold, the only thing, they have that in the title, US Gold, the best. It's the best of America, pretty much. It's we want this game out in Europe, but we don't want to release it ourselves. So I mean, it still says LucasArts and stuff, but it's being published by, LucasArts designed it. That's pretty much what it is. But it's being published by US Gold. So if you ever see anything by US Gold, you need to look deeper in that, because a lot of these games, like you go to the Hall of Light and you look up this game, it will say published by US Gold. Incomplete. Published by US Gold in Europe. Published by LucasArts or LucasFilm in America. The original company that designed it also published it in America, and we need to realize that. So from the manual, they added this to the US Gold version. Our game design philosophy We believe that you buy games to be entertained, not to be whacked over the head every time you make a mistake. This is, making fun of Sierra. So we don't bring the game to a screeching halt when you poke your nose in a place you haven't visited before. We make it clear, however, when you are in a dangerous situation. We think you'd prefer to solve the game's mysteries by exploring and discovering, not by dying 1,000 deaths. We also think you like to spend your time involved in the story, not typing in synonyms, until you stumble upon the computer's word for a certain object. Unlike conventional computer adventures, you won't find yourself accidentally stepping off a path or dying because you picked up a sharp object. There are a few dangerous situations where Guybrush can die, but to anticipate them takes just a little common sense, not excessive paranoia. Save the game when you think you may be entering a dangerous area. Don't assume that every wrong step will result in death. Usually you'll get another chance. Time for my annual look at Amiga World from October of 1991. Amiga World, an American magazine, although it was sold in other areas. You will see by the price in the upper right there. USA $3.95, Canada $4.95, UK and £2.80, with a big picture of Mighty Mouse there on the Commodore 1960 monitor with a deluxe paint there. I believe that is my monitor. It doesn't actually. The colored buttons there don't remind me, but I swear to God, I had a Commodore 1960 monitor. Let's look at a picture that I have. Here is my dad with the Commodore 1960 monitor. Look it up. That is the same one, but I looked it up already. It's the one in the magazine is the Commodore 1950 monitor. These scan qualities aren't always up to snuff. It looked like a 60 to me, but nevertheless, nice excuse to show off my dad playing on the Amiga. He's playing Railroad Tycoon there, by the way. The review itself, The Secret of Monkey Island by Jeff James, Ale Swilling, Treasure Hunting and Damsel Rescuing, Head the Bill Affair, and The Secret of Monkey Island, LucasFilm, $59.95, patterned after LucasFilm's earlier adventure games, Loom and Maniac Mansion. Secret serves up entertaining helping of swashbuckling adventure. Now, the review from here goes into a bunch of mechanics about the game, and that's I really do not like discussing gameplay mechanics unless they are absolutely required. It's all on the screen. Every little verb and it's all there. It's on the screen. It's again the manual was just 7 pages, and you can say that maybe it was just 7 pages because there wasn't much of a need to discuss the actual gameplay there. I'd rather them discuss, I don't know, like the feeling. What do you feel about the game? What kind of emotions does it stir in you? A little bit about the story and stuff, but I don't really like the way this particular review does it for the bulk of it. Unfortunately, Secret is obviously an IBM port with lackluster graphics and sluggish screen animation, at least on a stock Amiga 500. Oh, I'm playing it on a 500. But it is on a hard drive, and it does have a 8 megabytes extra RAM. But still, back in the day, I'm telling you, this whatever slowdown this game had would have been acceptable, and it was only on 4 discs too. I mean that would have been acceptable too at the time. In addition, Secret offers no capability to allow the user to turn off the music other than manually adjusting the speaker volume. But good game design always seems to overcome the problems of format conversion, and Secret does have a lot going for it. Well, if that is true, why did you go so deep into saying it's obviously an IB? It's not obviously an IB. They have tinkered with the graphics, okay? The red skin is now a peach color. They have, the background, whatever. It's not a straight port. It is not a straight port, period. It's not. And a good game is a good game. You can only do so much when it goes from version to version. It's the little things. As long as you get the little things, I mean, on very rare occasions, you can somehow just do extraordinary things, like Sid Meier's Pirates, for example. They did extraordinary things with the Amiga version in comparison to the other versions. On rare occasions, that can happen, and celebrate those games when they come along, but don't degrade other games you know, when they do go a little bit above and beyond, like this game, like they use their own sampled instruments here. They're not sampling the MT32 like Sierra loved to do. They have done something good here, and you can't just say, oh, it's obviously this, and then a couple, you know, paragraphs later say, well, I mean, it's got a lot going for it. Ah! The slow animation and screen scrolling seen when running on an Amiga 500 disappear when played on an accelerated Amiga or on an Amiga 3000 running Amiga DOS 2.0. The dialogue between Guybrush and the colorful characters he meets can provoke anything from smirks to belly laughter. Secret boasts some of the wittier and more humorous pixelized patter that this reviewer has ever had the pleasure to read. Throw in a surprise ending and a little romance, and Secret begins to develop into a fairly entertaining adventure. If you can live with Secret's shortcomings, you'll be rewarded by a lengthy and involved 4-disc adventure of sailing under the Jolly Roger, trading insults with unwashed ruffians, and haggling with used ship salesmen. You need at least 1 megabyte to run Secret, and it can be installed onto your hard drive. If you've enjoyed any of LucasFilm's earlier game offerings, Secret just might be your mug o' grog. So the very next month, November of 1991, Amiga World did their annual best of lists, and this is the best of 1991. You will have already seen some of this list in my Eye of the Beholder review, because Eye of the Beholder was number 10 of the year. Number 1 was Lemmings that year. Secret of Monkey Island did not make the list, but it did make the pinch hitter list. The pinch hitters. It's hard to limit the best games to 10. Here are 10 more that qualify to pinch hit for the A-team. Here you will notice one of the very few deaths that are allowed in a Monkey Island. Yes, remember when he said, I can hold my breath for 10 minutes? Well, if you actually sit there for 10 minutes, you will eventually die. That's a funny one, but it's very hard to get to that point. It's more of an Easter egg kind of a deal. And you'll also notice the pinch hitters also has a little thing at the bottom there where they go into the best public domain games. They even got Lavatron in there. So The Secret of Monkey Island, according to Amiga World, ranks as number 16 in their top 10. Going into the extras list. $59.95, you are Guybrush Threepwood, a would-be pirate who must prove himself by completing 3 difficult trials, detailed graphics, witty dialogue, and a surprise ending. A delightful mix of humor, swashbuckling adventure, and mind-bending puzzles. A welcome change from the all-too-standard alien zapping and dragon slaying. Hint, pick up everything you come across. Even red herrings can be put to good use. I would like to note also, number 14, Shadow of the Beast 2, where they say it is better than the original, yet it is listed as 14. And it's not even in their top 10, it is in the top 20 of that year. Shadow of the Beast, the first one, was listed number 1 in their 1990 list, I believe. And that is... I did not believe it deserved to be number 1 in that list when there were so many other great games. But here they say it's better than the original, yet it couldn't rank top 10. So I think Amiga World, occasionally, I know I love Amiga World, and I definitely go to them a lot. But I can't, by no means do I think they are perfect magazine. They have made many mistakes in my mind. Now, while Amiga World certainly liked the game, you can't make the top 20 list without liking it. They definitely liked the game. I got a feeling that's not going to satisfy, the LemonAmiga people, where it's number 1. It's number 1 and number 2, the second game, both of them, number 1 and 2, best Amiga games of all time. Well, fear not. Computer Gaming World has you covered. Now, I'm not going to show the original review because it's mostly focused on the DOS version, but here we are in 1996 for their best games of all time lists, and you might have seen this a little bit before because, well, I showed it for my recent Sid Meier's Pirates review, because Sid Meier's Pirates is number 18 on that list, and right below it, at number 19 of the 150 greatest games of all time from Computer Gaming World, The Secret of Monkey Island, LucasArts, 1989, it's 1990, I'm pretty sure it was originally released for DOS there. I got the year wrong. Who could ever forget the insult-driven dual system? Or the identity of the mysterious sword master. Of all things to say, I don't think either two of those are really that great. This is what's a woman, I don't care. Or the dual system, I don't really like. It's clever, I guess, but yeah, we're seeing the dual system on the screen as we speak. Yes, originally it is very clever. The more you go back to the game, because I believe adventure games are about the destination, not the journey. Whereas maybe an RPG is about the journey, not the destination. A lot of games are about that, but I believe adventure games, because they're so story-centric, it's all about the story. You want the story, so no matter what the gameplay is like, there's all kinds of adventure games, and a lot of them can differ quite a bit in terms of their overall presentation and their gameplay mechanics. But regardless, you want to get through to the end. That is the goal. It's sort of like an interactive movie in a way. You can fool around, you can mess with the puzzles and stuff, but adventure games are not about the puzzles, I don't believe. It doesn't matter how frustratingly hard they are or how easy they are. Puzzles are just a thing to occupy you, so you feel like you're getting more out of the game, like you're interacting with the game. But the main thing is reading, watching, playing. You want to see the story. That's the main thing of all adventure games. So I feel like in retrospect, while the insult sword fighting was very clever, because you don't want to put action scenes in an adventure game. Sierra was very guilty of doing this, and it really kind of places their games down a step in terms of history. When you're playing a space quest and suddenly you gotta dodge a bunch of rocks and stuff, it really it just doesn't feel like it belongs. So Monkey Island was very clever in you're playing a pirate game, you need to sword fight, but we don't want your reflex skills for that fight. We want your intellect skills, so they did the insult sword fighting, which is very clever. But when you go back to the game several times, and if it's one of your favorite games, you're going to play it over and over. I feel like the insult sword fighting, the learning of the insult sword fighting, it's a very tedious and long process, and you're seeing the same screens over and over again. So while it is clever, because adventure games are about the story, and that's a good chunk of the game that you're getting no story, I don't feel like it is the greatest thing ever when looked at historically. To me, the game's story is strong enough and witty enough and funny enough that you just want more of the story. You don't want to be bogged down learning these insult sword fighting things. Although it is memorable and clever, I definitely give it credit for that. It is when you go back to the game over and over again, I think the sword fighting is going to be one of the things that you're not looking forward to on repeat visits, I'm going to say. But wait, there's more! The top 15 funniest computer games. Number 2 is Secret of Monkey Island 1 and 2. They put them together. They got the year right this time. From the insult-driven swashbuckling to the previously owned gags of Stan the Salesman, this series was a non-sexist bust-up. What are they trying to make fun of with non-sexist? Are they making fun of Leisure Suit Larry there? I don't know. But wait, there's more! Number 10 in the top 15 most memorable game villains of all time. LeChuck from the Secret of Monkey Island series. Whether alive or undead, this scurvy-brained pirate made Guybrush Threepwood's life miserable. But wait, there's more! Top 15 most rewarding endings of all time. Number 2 is The Secret of Monkey Island. After solving the last puzzle, you were rewarded with a fabulous free-running animation, starting with Guybrush being ejected from inside a grog machine and ending with Guybrush in love. But wait, there's more! The 15 most memorable game heroes of all time. Number 3, Guybrush Threepwood. From a 90-pound weakling to swashbuckling adventurer, this intriguing protagonist grew in more ways than just combat and puzzle-solving skills and these terrific story lines. The But Wait There's More is a tribute to Stan the Salesman from this game. I hope that is a proper tribute to all of the Lemon fans who place this game as their #1 ever Amiga game of all time. I hope showing off those Computer Gaming World posts makes you feel like this review is giving the game the respect it deserves. I absolutely respect that this is listed as the #1 Amiga game of all time on the LemonAmiga site. It's not my favorite Amiga game. I definitely put it in the top 100, absolutely. It's not my favorite Monkey Island game. It's the third one is, but I really do. I do enjoy this game. And I put it above the second one too. The second one, I think the puzzles in this game, they're all so. This is one of my favorite. This is my favorite puzzle in the entirety of the game. The picking up the mugs, filling it with grog, and then we are taking the mug's melting, and it will melt if you don't put it into another mug. We gotta take the grog to the jail cell to bust out a prisoner there. I remember the first time I played that puzzle, and I remember picking up one of the mugs and then filling it with grog and then having it melt on me. I'm like, what the hell? It was that kind of ingenuity. Like I realized that, okay, this thing is melting the mugs. I wonder if I can use this to break out the guy in jail. But how do I get it there? I kept, running out. So it's a timing thing, and you got to just, get all those mugs that you can, and then you got to switch the mugs, and then eventually you can get to the jail. The puzzles in this game, all of them are solvable. They're not easy. They're not, stupidly easy to where anybody could do it. But I don't think many of them will, cause you to want to order the hint book or go online and find the walkthroughs. I believe they all make sense. And where it says LucasArts earlier in the manual, where it says, they are all about not beating you on the head, not doing these stupid things like Sierra did. I believe the second game was guilty of becoming like Sierra, and Guybrush couldn't die really in the second game either, but the puzzles became very obtuse in the second game, which the story is still wonderful in the second game, but the puzzles became a detriment to the overall game, which is about the end, not the journey. It's about the destination. The puzzles became a detriment in the second game, so overall I place this original as better than the second one. Let's go into a little bit more about my personal memories now. Back in the day, my dad, we didn't have that many adventure games on the Amiga. We had a couple Sierra games, and I do believe that is why we didn't have that many adventure games. I remember playing, Heroes Quest, King's Quest a little bit, and I love the Sierra storylines too. I always adventure. I love the genre of adventure games, and because I just love the stories. So many unique and wonderful stories in many various adventure games. But I do feel like my dad, he might not have. He was into all these big games, like strategy games, like simulations, like RPGs, and he could defeat them. But again, when the puzzles are obtuse and they're stupid, like they are designed so you will buy the hint book. There was a big market back in the day. Sierra made buttloads of money when they published hint books, so they always had to have a few of those puzzles, and add on to that the frustration with some Sierra games when you're just doing something naturally and boom, you fall off the screen, or you fall into a river and you're eaten by an alligator. Like these things, they're funny at first, but when that happens on every single screen over and over and over again, it stops being funny at some point when you can't progress, when it's your first time playing the game. And it's impossible, especially back then. You paid a lot of money. Some Sierra games would go northward of $80. That's how much money at times they would charge for their adventure games. When you spend that kind of money on a game and you are treated like crap by the game designers, I think that steered a lot of people away from the entire genre. And I think my dad really would have liked the Secret of Monkey Island. I do remember seeing the box in Slipped Disc, our local Amiga dealer. I don't think I saw the back of the box. I believe it was just a little bit out of my reach as a kid, but I definitely remember seeing the front of the box. It is a very memorable box cover. I remember seeing that as a kid. We did not have it, but I remember many years later when I first got into emulation, again in the late 90s, when I would be researching the Amiga again. Even back then, a lot of Amiga folk would put this in their top games lists, especially the top adventure games list. So if you were to look into it back in the day, this was always there. Everybody would always write a little blurb about this game. So not knowing anything about it other than remembering the box. I didn't have the second one, or I didn't have the third one at the time. I got the ADF based on the recommendations from everybody online, and put it into WinUAE, and I immediately thought the graphics were gorgeous on the thing. Really enjoyed the graphics, and again, you were able to feel your way through it, and it was I felt very accomplished playing the game, and being able to figure it out. It was probably my second. I believe I went searching for the best Amiga adventure games based on my newfound love at the time for adventure games, which was based off of the first adventure game I ever got to fully immerse myself into, which was the X-Files on Windows 98 there, an interactive movie and adventure game. I really fell in love with that game. A lot of it had to do with my love for the X-Files, but playing it, again, it's always about the story, and when you factor in the story, it doesn't matter the interface or any of that stuff, it's just the story. And having the X-Files marked there really helped me. Like, I wanted that game. I had no idea what it was about, no idea how it would play. I just knew it was an X-Files game, so I got it. And I loved the story in the game, and I was like, oh, okay, this is it. And then you read up on it. Okay, this is what they call an adventure game. Okay, I like this. I really like this. So I also liked the Amiga at the time, and I'm getting back into the emulation. So I'm looking up, well, what's the best adventure games on the Amiga? And this one always comes up, so you get it. And so I first fell in love with the adventure genre because of the X-Files. The very next one I would have played would have been this one in WinUAE. And equally, I very much fell in love with it at the time. Now, I did not look into the second game at the time because it's one of those. It's 11 discs in total, I believe. For emulation, you don't even want to deal with it back in the day, and that was before I could figure out the hard drive stuff. So I didn't touch the games that were over like 4 discs back then. So my first exposure to the second game would have been through DOS. Again, I got Monkey Island 1 and 2 for DOS. And when I got my MT32, I think before the MT32 even, I got both of them. Because they're great games for DOS as well. I truly enjoyed playing them, and once I got the third one, wow, I really fell in love with the third one. I like the fourth one as well. This is one of my most enjoyable series of all time. When I think of my favorite overall series of games, it would definitely be in the top 10. I think my overall opinion of the game might have, it's been knocked down just a little bit over the last few years because the games are so much about that storyline and it's so much humor based. Well, what happens if you don't particularly care for the humor that is being displayed? That is probably where my overall opinion is just it's slightly going down over the years. It's because it's so fourth wall breaking at times, and sometimes that's funny, but maybe it happens a little too much at times. I'm trying to be careful in my words because I know this one is really beloved and I respect that, and I also really like the game, but don't adore it. Is what I'm trying to say. It's you really, if you don't like that humor, and some of it I do like, but because there's so many little one-liners in the game. The more you come back to it, you might have been, belly laughing when you first played it. Maybe the second time you played it, and the third time. I've played this game probably over 20 times by now, and I feel like the more I play it, the less laughter I am getting from it, because it's so much based on the one-liners, and that's the humor that is coming to you. You might have just seen the line, "Oh, sure, walk to the sun." That is one of the few times that I laughed when I played this again. That is, every time I see that, you walk, tell him to walk to the sun. Every single time I see that, I laugh. There are only a few of those moments in the game where every single time I play it, I laugh. It's because a lot of those lines get stale the more you play it. So while I really thought they were a hoot when I originally played it, it's just the more you play it, the less those lines can make you laugh. So I tend to I'll gravitate more towards the serious adventure games these days, like Uninvited. I just recently did a review on that one, and that game is going more up over the last few years. I didn't used to think that much of that game. Several years ago, I wouldn't have thought that was the greatest game. But that game is slowly inching upwards in my overall thought patterns. The best games, list kind of thing. It's the more I play that one, the more I respect it more and more. Versus this one's kind of just slowly going. It's not like a huge decline or anything. I truly do enjoy this game, but it's just I'm just noting the overall trends there, and hopefully I said my opinion there in a way that is respectful towards the people that think this is the greatest Amiga game of all time. I respect that completely. I do really enjoy the game, but hopefully I also expressed my opinion in it. I mean, I still like the game. I just don't think it's number one kind of thing. But hopefully, I said all of that in a way where you can respect my opinion as well, because I definitely respect the people that think this is great, because it is great. It absolutely is great. I say these things so you get the nuances of my opinion, because, as I've said many times before, I refuse to give a flat-out rank in any review. I'm never going to give, this game is a 92%. I'm never going to give A, B, C's. I'm never going to give, 3 out of 4, whatever. I'm never going to give those kind of ratings. I hate those kind of ratings in any kind of a review, because you should never. I respect you guys too much to tell you flat out what I think. I believe in the power of words. So I'm telling you everything I can, rather than just state fact. Maybe I could certainly make the review a lot shorter if I just said this is what I think the game is worth. But I respect people's intelligence way too much. I respect games too much just to rate them like that. Games deserve more. Games deserve better than 4 out of 5 stars or whatever. They deserve actual intellectual thought discussions. So I say these things so you understand the nuances of my opinion. Because if I left them out, maybe you would think I thought this was, if I just said it was great and I just showed those computer gaming world things, and I left out maybe, how it's slowly sliding a tiny bit, in my opinion. If I left all that out, you probably would think that I thought this, was the number one greatest Amiga game ever. So if that's not how I feel, I don't, I want to tell you the truth. I want you guys to know, how I feel about the game. But at the same time, you definitely risk angering some people when you don't love a game that is loved by so many people. I do love the game. So I'm telling you, it's a very nuanced opinion. I'm curious anybody that has made it this far in the video, go ahead and in the comments, leave me a percentage of what you think I think about this game. From 0 to 100%. I'm just curious. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm not, because I think my words, I think you should be able to garner an opinion based on those words. But I am curious where you guys would place it. And based on those, I'm just curious. For myself, I'd like to see what you guys think I think of it. And, I'll figure out whether or not I'm doing these reviews right then. Take a look at this interesting magazine from Europe, because it's a magazine that covered all sorts of systems back in the day, much like Computer Gaming World did. This one here is going to cover the Amiga, the ST, and the IBM PC versions. I guess they have a system based off of a score of 100 as the top for the Amiga, which they list overall as the best version compared to the ST or the original PC, and I would agree with them there. Really benefits from a hard disk. The game operates somewhat slowly. Yeah, you hear me in the background. There's one of those moments where even today I'm still laughing at that Indiana Jones reference there. Possibly due to the overheads of the SCUM authoring system that was used for this game, and Loom. Sound is superb, however, and the graphics are excellent by most game standards, though sometimes the detail of the image loses out to the limited resolution of the display. A quality Amiga animated graphics adventure without a doubt. ST, again, a mighty fine program, excellent graphics, and surprisingly good sound add to the atmosphere, making Monkey Island supremely enjoyable title. Lots of planning and storyboarding yields good results, offering a narrative style which others could well learn from. It's a little hard to read this one because the scan is not the greatest quality. The ST got a ranking of 918. I get an ace ranking. All of them have an ace ranking. But the IBM PC original gets a 915, so it's it's the least of them all, but it's just slightly less. You really need a powerful VGA machine to get the best out of this, but even EGA owners should appreciate the game. Personally, I think it can definitely be made a claim that the original EGA version of this game, depending on your taste, you might actually prefer the graphic style of the original EGA version, because they used a nice EGA palette. A lot of games didn't use a good EGA palette. They used a nice one, and you can tell it was the original, so there's a lot of love put into that EGA version. I think there's a lot of people, like I would say Loom. Loom got a VGA version eventually, and I would definitely say that the EGA original, as well as the Amiga version, which copied the EGA version, you can definitely make the case that Loom, the best was the EGA version, and that they didn't really know what they were doing with the VGA version. It's a little more nuanced with Secret of Monkey Island here, because I do believe that the VGA version is very well done. As for the rest of the PC thoughts there, I really can't read it. I get the overall impression that they're saying that the graphics are a little better than the Amiga, but that the Amiga is really good, and that and especially compared to the EGA version, they're saying, but that a hard disk is highly recommended. Now, I always like to point out, back in the day, people have to realize when they are comparing historically games on the Amiga versus the PC, we always tend to forget that there were a lot of different PCs, and very, very few people at the time a game was released had the best PC. Again, like Wing Commander, like everyone always says, well, you want to play Wing Commander, play it in DOS. Well, now we have the benefit of DOSBox and emulator. Or even when you have the actual hardware, you have the benefit of many years later worth of hardware. So people are playing these old games even on the real hardware. They're playing it on newer hardware. They are not actually playing it on the hardware that most people had back then. So I said, you need a very good PC if you want to play this game. Meaning that if you thought the Amiga version was a little slow, it was also slow on the PC. You have to remember this stuff, because not everybody had the top-of-the-line PC when a game came out brand new. So comparatively speaking, the Amiga version was right up there, even in terms of speed. It was right up there with what most people had in terms of the actual horsepower of their PC then. You have to remember this. I would like to tell you guys how much I absolutely love Elaine. I really love that character because, like, she is woman, okay? Like, some of the reviews earlier said, oh yeah, we're rescuing a damsel in distress. No, we're not rescuing a damsel in distress. This damsel has everything under her own control. If we didn't exist, that's the funny thing about this game. We are not needed. In no way are we required to be in this game. It's completely, like, our existence doesn't mean anything. Had we never shown up on this island, the governor would have still been kidnapped by LeChuck. LeChuck still would have tried to marry her. And had we not interrupted that trap that she had set with the monkeys, probably would have worked. And, you know, the monkeys would have shot the root beer at LeChuck, thus ending the menace. Thus, Elaine would have been just fine. Elaine would have been the person that got rid of LeChuck. We don't need to exist. We have done nothing in this game. Like, we got in the way a little bit, and we became the hero because we got in the way. We became the hero out of necessity because we were stumbling fool. But without us, the would have gone on just fine. Like, we didn't actually save Elaine. She would have saved herself. She is fully capable of being, you know, like, we happen to like her and she happens to like us. My God, thank God. Thank God somebody liked the nerd here. Even though we stumbled our way through our first meeting, we couldn't even speak a sentence, and she still liked us. God bless her soul. Here we will get the first ever face shot of LeChuck, a close-up face shot. Most of the main characters have a couple face shots in the game. Even some of the bar people have face shots. This is the first full-on face shot that we get of LeChuck, and everything else is in that third-person, zoomed-out kind of view. Again, the second game would keep with the zoomed-out. Like, I don't believe there are any close-up shots of any of the characters in the second game, which overall, the second game's graphics are a notable improvement, actually, compared to this. But for whatever reason, they got rid of those close-ups. This is a great shot right here. I really love, you know, the two of them together right there. I think that's a great shot. If anyone would like to know one of the final straws in getting me to start putting videos on my channel and showing them in the correct aspect ratio, it's this picture that you see right here. Actually, for the DOS version, I took a screenshot on my DOS PC using, you know, a program for DOS that took screenshots. It took it of the actual 320 by 200 image in DOS, and I just posted that on Facebook, and then one of my friends was trolling me, and he says, why are their faces so stretched? And I didn't even realize. I just assumed, okay, I took a screenshot from the actual computer. I assumed it was correct. And then once he said that, I looked at it, and I'm like, oh my God. You are so right. Their faces are stretched widescreen, and it's because of that 320 by 200 resolution is technically wide. So then, you know, I took a picture of the actual screen and showed it correct in 4:3, and that definitely had an impact on me wanting to show the Amiga stuff in its correct 4:3 aspect ratio, because this is the correct shape of a human being's face. And you look at anybody else showing this game online, the number one rated LemonAmiga game, you look at anybody else's video of this or screenshots, and they're gonna, you know, have their faces puffed out a little fatter than they should be, because it's all playing in PAL mode, which, you know, shows those 320 by 200 images stretched. Anyways, that's the game, everybody. So in terms of pointing you to other videos, I think I'm just going to keep it in the adventure genre. Just point you to the other two adventure games that I've done already on this channel, which would be Uninvited on the Amiga and the X-Files for Windows 98. Check out those two adventure games. Subscribe if you want to. And also make sure to check out my written review, shot97retro.blogspot.com. Links in the descriptions and such. I'll see you all later. Bye.